Well, so I came across some information, and there's bits and pieces to this that I'm going to add to it. Um, and being that we're talking about food preparations, I mean, we talk a lot about that. I mean, because food and water, that's some of the most important things to add to preps and whatnot. Things that we need to stay alive per se.
Right.
And I saw the title and it said over 140,000 farms lost in the last 5 years. And I was like, wow. So I went and did some research on that. And basically, it's a lot of the smaller farms, the mom and pops and the more,
Right.
It's a shame because that was like America's shining star at one point. You know what I mean? The folks that, went out there, built the farm from scratch, made it a generational where multiple generations were running these farms. And then now big ag is just coming in and wiping these people off the face of the earth, man. And
it's all been planned, man.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, because so I started doing some digging and come to find out Iowa has lost over a 500,000 acres of farmland in the past 5 years, according to the agriculture census. North Carolina could be on pace to lose 1.4 million acres of farmland by 2040. And I was just like, that's insane, man. Insane when you look at numbers like that. And also the folks that farms, local farms and stuff, like they hire, since these big agriculture, big corporations are taking over these farms, they're only going to grow the things that benefit them per se, financially, profitability wise. And they're also doing what you see at Walmart, where there's, one cash register and they're all self checkouts. I found out that there's robots out there now harvesting millions of acres of farmland every single day versus people.
Anything that is centralized is not good for the consumer, right? Including government, right? So look at money. So that's centralized. Take a look at what's happened to our money over the last century. It's lost almost all of its value. Take a look at the VA. It's a centralized medical system for veterans. How many people have you heard? Well, I mean, I've heard some terrible stories, about how the VA cannot handle the number of patients, veterans that it has. And I've heard that patients or veterans that are so fed up with the system and are so tired of living in pain that they just go out to the VA parking lot and take their own lives. Anything that's centralized is not good. Decentralization is the best. And what they're doing with the banks is trying to centralize them, trying to allow all of the small mom and pop banks, as I like to call them, to go bankrupt so that they can be gobbled up by the big banks like JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And they're doing the same thing with our food. They're trying to get it centralized so that it can be more of a monopoly, I guess you can say. Less hands have control over it. That's what they're doing with everything, but eventually it's going to fail. And that's why we have to prepare. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter who sits behind the desk, because it's not 100% the person, it's the system that's rotten to the core. So, and that's why I always go back to, you have to be prepared, because it's not going to be a soft landing. It's going to be pretty harsh. Hey, Gray, did you look at the price of gold this last few days?
Yeah. It's been gold and crypto, man, back to back are just killing it.
Oh, yeah.
Man. It's doing pretty good. And I mean, usually when that's doing pretty good, the dollar's not doing so well.
Well, I mean, the dollar is actually still doing pretty darn well, comparatively speaking, to other failed currencies, fiat currencies, right? So if you take all of the fiat currencies that the dollar is weighed against, the dollar is doing pretty well. But it's because all of them all together are doing terrible, and they're just showing you how they're doing against each other. So what is it that they say, that the dollar is the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry? So it's the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry, something like that.
Oh man, it's funny. You did a video, I think it was a couple of days ago, about Tyson Foods. There was an article I read that said, "No farmers, no food. Will you eat bugs?" And it seems like that's what all this culminates to, because we all know that the Chinese government has been buying farmland, which goes back to another video that you had discussed.
Well,
I mean, it ties into that.
Isn't Tyson owned by China?
Absolutely. Most people don't know that, though. Most people do not know that.
And you know what, Gray? People will eat bugs. If you ask 100 people on the streets and you ask them, will you eat bugs? You know, if meat becomes too expensive or this or that, most of them will say, heck no, I ain't going to eat no bugs, but they will, because things are going to get bad enough to where they're going to have one of two choices. You either eat bugs or you starve. It's that I would rather just feed those bugs to my chickens and then eat the eggs. But that's not what they want, okay? Because the earth is going to heat up so bad that it's going to boil everyone in it next year if we don't start eating bugs. So make sure you eat your bugs, all right, so that we don't boil in this, global warming thing that's going on, all right? So people will eat bugs. But like I said, that's not even going to be the suffering part. There's going to come a point where the people will stand up. And I believe that time is going to come between now and the next 8 to 10 years. There's going to be something that happens that will 100% change the way that our system of governance is now.
Yeah, I saw, it's funny, we're talking about this, and I get bored at my job sometimes because, there'll be slow periods, and there was an episode of Doomsday Preppers on, and I played it for background noise, and all of a sudden, one of the Doomsday Preppers was teaching his children and himself how to eat bugs for the end of days. And they were eating mealworms, crickets, and some other odds and ends. And it just made me think that, like, wow, I guess some people feel that that's okay. And I get if you're out there in the woods and you need some sort of protein, you got to do what you got to do, man. But like, I wouldn't want to sustain my life on it personally,
Look, I'll eat bugs, and I will coerce my family into eating bugs if it was for survival.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, if that was all that was left, if all my nutrient survival was gone, and I had nothing, and we had a bunch of maggots in the back, I'd be putting them in water, letting them get cleaned out, and eating those. That's good protein and fat right there. That is survival. But having a government that puts you in a position as a nation or as a world that puts you in a position where they're going to tell you you're going to eat bugs because of the policies that they've passed and have made it to where you have no other choice, that's a different story, and that's why I say that the people will stand up, because eventually they will wake up. So unfortunately, it's the useful idiots, the ones that are being used right now to try to push this narrative that will go first. And that's just the way it's happened throughout history, Gray. Any empire that you've heard of that has been toppled, right? It's because the people within it have first done an awful lot of suffering, and they then become so fed up that they topple their government. What do you think sanctions are for, right? When the U.S. puts sanctions on country A, let's say, what is it that they're trying to do? It's not trying to get at the leaders, because the leaders are still going to be able to eat, no matter how many sanctions they put on them. They're trying to get to the common folk, trying to have them suffer so that they can get angry enough to topple their own governments. That's what sanctions are for. So if our government or anyone's government would do it to someone else, to someone else's government, what in the world makes you think that they wouldn't do it to you, its own people?
No, I agree 100%, brother. I wanted to answer Pony Girl's question. She writes, if we grow a garden and SHTF, won't the powers that be marauders take it? We should greenleaf our gardens like being Gray Man, just a suggestion. And Pony Girl, I've thought about this long and hard, because you folks know I love gardening. Matter of fact, probably have a garden video coming out this week, getting ready to clean up the spring garden and turn it into a summer garden per se, or a winter garden turning into a summer garden. There's no spring in Florida, folks. I thought the best way I feel to do something is to have a garden that you can lose, like what do they call it? The fake garden, it looks like a little home garden.
Like a hydroponic garden?
No, just a garden that's made to get destroyed.
Oh, I get you. I get you, like a decoy, right?
Yeah, decoy. There we go. Thanks, Rudy. A decoy garden, because I would still have a garden, but I'm really looking into, when I get my property, as a food forest situation, because then there's just food growing out in the woods in general. So it wouldn't really draw attention specifically to right in that location. And unless they know what they're looking for, that might be an option too, because it blends in with the forest, the surrounding forest. And there's lots of foods that you can do that with, herbs and spices, medicinal plants. There's so much stuff that you can use in the natural environment of where you live. So I've been thinking about going that direction with the kind of undercover garden, a true SHTF scenario. Just my take on it.
Well, great. You want to hear my take on it?
Go ahead, brother.
All right, get ready to drink a little. All right, there you go. So, I bet you that a lot of people will probably disagree with me, but I believe that if it is a true SHTF, a real SHTF, I'm talking about where utilities are down, where there's no public services, cops are gone, et cetera, right? I would not want to grow a garden for a while. Remember that any kind of crisis, be it small or large crisis, it's called a crisis because it has a beginning and an end, right? So eventually that SHTF, it's going to end eventually, right? And you're going to turn over into a new paradigm, a new era of time, et cetera, et cetera. So for at least the beginning until the die-off has occurred, because if there's a true SHTF, there's going to be a die-off, right? Because if we have no utilities, we have no electricity, no water, whatever, you're going to have people that are on breathing machines and the hospitals die off. Then you're going to have people that need medication that's life-saving that they didn't prep for that die off, et cetera. So I would not even want to plant a garden until after the die-off and the marauders have been taken care of. That's one of the reasons I believe that your preparations are for. So if you have a year, 2 years worth of preparations for food, that's what I would like to live on. Why? Because I want zero things to attract anyone to where I'm at. And God forbid if somebody's walking across your property that you don't know about and they trip over a banana. I'm just saying, I know you're not growing bananas, but let's just say they trip over a banana or an avocado in Florida. And they're like, oh my goodness. And they start looking for more stuff and they find more stuff. And that's more reason for them to stick around that area and then look around even more so than what you wanted them to, right? So for the first bit until the die-off and until the marauders are taken care of, I'm going to keep my seeds where I need to keep them, live off my preps. If I can do some hunting, do a little bit of hunting in order to supplement your preps. And then once the dust has settled, if the crisis is still ongoing because utilities and governance or any of that stuff is not up yet, then I'll start planting a garden. And that's why I believe that prepping more than just 1 or 2 or 3 months worth of food is important. I think that at least at a minimum, a year you need to have, if not more. What do you think about that?
I had a conversation with my daughter because she was looking for something and she went into one of my bins and she's like, "Wow, you have a lot of these contractor bags, these black contractor bags." She said, "Why so many?" And I went through a little bit of an explanation. I said, but also, I said, I don't want to use a generator in a long-term scenario. I said, if we're using solar or something like that and we're having lights or candles or anything that we're going to be using in the house, I want to black out all the windows because if I'm the only house with light on the street, I'm going to be drawing attention to myself. So that makes sense because you kind of want to be that gray man mentality and kind of keep while everything is crashing down, like you say, the marauders and the kill off or the die off per se. That actually makes absolute sense. So I would have to agree with you there. It's I'm glad we had these conversations because it gives me more information to digest and think about. You know what I mean? And hopefully other folks watching as well. So that is a good point in regards to that. Yeah, I would have to agree.
Trucker Hersey says he's off his rockers, referring to me. Bananas don't grow in Alaska.
I'm going to go on a side story. So I told you, Rudy, before on Family Day, I take the wife out and we do gear testing and training, just like not for YouTube, but for ourselves. And we were doing some like not really naked and afraid. I made a joke while we were out in the woods, but we built a bridge over a creek in the woods. We take a trail and we start going down these side paths and just exploring things. So we built this little bridge. We went over to the side of the creek because I spotted an orange. And yeah, it's Florida. So you're bound to see oranges somewhere. But this was in the middle of the woods, just nowhere land.
Oh, interesting.
In the swamp. And so we built this bridge. We started going there. And then we couldn't get the oranges were kind of high up, like on this vine, which threw me off. And so we fashioned a stick and, trying to knock the oranges down. And we finally got 2 of them. And we did the whole little the survival thing where we cheered, like, oh, we get to eat now. And we got oranges. And we, did the whole like wine glass thing. And we started laughing about it. And the fail part of that is that we come to find out they were sour oranges. They're still, you can still eat them, but they were like
man, I'll tell you what, I would love to have some of those.
they were
Naranja agria. Oh
yes.
man, to make some what's it called again? Mojo?
Yeah, and that's what she said. We can use it for cooking, but
yeah, yeah.
If you don't go out there and do some of the things and test your gear, play around and have a good time while you can, if things really go into a situation, you're not going to have a clue what to do. And it's fun. We enjoy it. You know what I mean? We've seen the National Guard deployed in the New York subway stations. But my question is, so it's okay to deploy the National Guard in the New York subway station because it's bad there, the crime and all stuff like that. But when you deploy National Guard at the border, it's an issue. Do you see that, how that doesn't make sense to me?
I think when Orange Man Bad was still in office, I was asked, when do you think that things are going to get so bad that we're going to need our preps? And back then I said, I think towards the end of 2024 and into 2025 is when things are going to get extremely bad and continue to get worse. So great. Everything that's been happening has been done on purpose to the American people. They've done it on purpose to show the American people that they can do it. And there's nothing that we will do about it. And there is nothing that we will do about it, except for bitch about it and complain until it gets bad enough that the people will have had enough. All right. Because imagine this scenario. There's a group of people in the United States that right now is being replaced with another group of people, right? That are entering the country unlawfully. When that group of people gets really angry and says, I'm not going to vote for you anymore. I've been voting for you for the last 60 years. And what have we gotten? Guess what? They're going to lose it. So I just hope that this year, that this next presidential contest goes as planned, that it's done the right way. And it doesn't matter who wins, because whoever wins, half of the country is going to be pissed off at the other half. So that's why I said that 10 years ago is why I said towards the end of 2024, going into 2025, because number one, if there's something that happens that keeps us from having that contest, that's going to create chaos. Number two, it doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't matter. It's going to create chaos going forward. There's going to be a lot of violence on the streets. There's going to be a lot of bad things happening. So we still have time. Get prepared now. Everyone right now is talking about gold and silver and crypto. Oh my goodness, look at gold. Even me, I'm like, oh. Sorry, my alarm went off. Even me, towards the beginning, I was like, oh my God, have you looked at gold and this and this and that? I think it still has a way higher price point to go. We can talk about that later if you want. But everyone's talking about gold. Everyone's talking about crypto. And no one's really talking about, hey, what's going to happen when we get closer to November? And if this scenario takes place, then what will what will happen because of it? If there's no contest, or if there is, and this side wins or that side wins, all of those scenarios, in my opinion, are going to be bad. So you need to get prepared now, because there's going to be chaos in the streets like this generation for sure has never experienced. In my opinion, that is.
Yeah, I saw Tony. She said she lost one of her friends.
That's really too bad.
Yeah, and that's their plan. That's their plan. And have you this article? I had to, because it had to do with the border crisis, right? But have you heard of the cannibal gang in Haiti? Have you heard of that term yet, Rudy?
Oh, wow.
Gang.
Yeah, that's terrible.
They're eating people they've killed on the streets as violence erupts. It's graphic, as you know what. They're worried about some of this gang, because we get a lot of Haitians over in the southern border, and they're worried about this spilling over to the United States. And I'm like, I can only imagine we see that on the news here in a couple of months. People eating other people. I wouldn't be surprised, my friend. They say that we, as preppers, we have a conspiratorial mindset when it comes to certain things, but then they prove us right when certain things happen. Like another article that popped up on my feed one day was, or just recently, you know how Boeing is having a lot of issues with these planes and stuff like that? It's been happening for, I guess, over a month now, or maybe longer. I just read an article out of South Carolina. It said, former Boeing employee whistleblower has been found dead According to the BBC, John Barnett, a former Boeing employee known for raising concerns about the firm's production standards, has been found dead in his Charleston County, South Carolina home. He worked for the company for over 32 years, but he just found dead. He was 62 years old.
Let me tell you how that story ends. I haven't even heard you read the rest of the story.
I know what you're going to say, and it's right here.
He was found dead. He committed suicide with 6 gunshots to the back of his head. Is that
close enough? It says self-inflicted gunshot wounds on March 9th, police investigators say.
Amazing. Hey, I wanted to point out this comment, Gray. There it is, by Cronin. It was at 3:32, Cronin. And he says, when we were talking about Haiti, and he says, the third world is a money pit. They must figure it out for themselves. Cronin, I just want to say, I agree with you 110%. 110%. I mean, I think that the world as a whole would be much better off if there was no interference by any other nation into a nation's affairs, whether they be good or bad. You have to let them figure it out for themselves. And guess what? We are going to learn that as a nation here in the United States of America. I believe that when things get at their worst here in the U.S., that most other nations around the world will exercise just what Cronin said. They will let us figure it out by ourselves. That is when we're going to find out who our real, true allies are.